Welcome, listeners, but take heed. We will say whatever we need
to share our knowledge, thoughts, and joy, and even things that do annoy.
Before we begin, please be aware, we have a tendency to swear.
You have been warned, make no mistake, so join us now.
We're for Fawkes' sake. Welcome to For Fawkes' Sake, a Harry Potter book movie compare and contrast podcast. I'm your host, Ellen, and again, I've got Abigail and Max with me to have some great Harry Potter conversations.
Hi.
Hello.
So let's start off these conversations. First with a recap of what we talked about last time, with our Phoenix flashback. Last week we covered the first half of Chapter 18, Birthday Surprises, and the sort of corresponding film scenes, assuming you don't care about seeing any apparition in the movies.
I care.
Though shoehorned in the movie, we do get a refresher on Bezoars in both, but in the book it's during Harry's actual potions lesson, where he cheats, having to follow Gulpalot's third law, but still gets top marks. The movie just has Harry creeping up on a different potions class so he can fail miserably at trying to get the real memory from Slughorn, which he does in both. The book has a whole delightful and traumatizing scene with apparition that the movie didn't think we needed, but we really did.
During episode 228, Harry level trauma, our Potter pondering was, if you were Harry, how would you have approached Slughorn about the real memory?
Hi guys, it's Kendra Copeland. I'm calling in my Potter pondering. What would I do if I was Harry Potter? Sorry, if I could stop right there, I would have so many answers, but that's not the question. What would I do if I was Harry Potter to get the memory from Slughorn? So, I think so. This is a little bit given to me from how he eventually got it. So I don't know if it's just cheating, but first, though, I think one thing I'm really good at is, becoming friendly with people, even if I don't particularly want to be. Very Slytherin of me. And I would have, really worked my way into the Slug Club and actually took advantage of that, kind of how he was doing in the movie. Definitely not how he was doing in the book. But I would have really, wormed my way in so Slughorn, was willing to communicate to me more, And then I definitely would have told him a little bit of stuff that, not many people know, including what he says in the book. Well, is it in the book or in the movie? Now I'm getting mixed up, where he says, I am the chosen one, And I would have actually not asked for the memory. I know that's what Dumbledore wanted, but that might have been the most embarrassing thing. I would have just asked him to tell me word for word what Tommy V said at that moment, because they just need to know what he asked and what Slughorn said. That's all they need to know. So if he doesn't want to have the evidence out there, no one could prove it. If he can just tell them without, having the actual evidence given, they have, they could just put those words into that memory. I don't know. I don't see why they have to have the memory. Why can't they just have the words? And it would have given them the same thing. And he probably would have been more willing to do that because, it's less to be nervous that gets out to other people. There you go. Bye.
Hey guys, Michaela here with my Potter pondering. If I were Harry, how would I get the memory from Slughorn? Okay, so a probably funny answer at first would be to pull what I'm calling a Crab and Goyle. Just fill up, I don't know, he likes pineapples, so fill a whole bunch of pineapple with some sleeping draft, wait till he conks out, and take the memory. But then, yeah, I'll definitely play on his ego, since Harry's pretty much his crown jewel and now prize students, yeah, definitely play on Slughorn's more ego. Tell him that, the fate of the world, or the wizarding world anyway, depends on this particular memory. Yeah, that's about it.
Hey guys, it's Jackson with my Potter Pondering here. How would I get the memory if I were Harry? Well, I would try a more subtle approach. I would appeal to Slughorn's ego, And yes, I would do as, I think it was Abigail said, I would say, I am the chosen one, and I need this in order to defeat Voldemort. This is important. You want to help the Chosen One, don't you, Professor? You want to be the one who helped the Chosen One defeat the Dark Lord. You know, would he use that flattery, that ego bashing to get that memory out of him?
Hi, this is Jessica calling in my Potter Pondering. I think Harry should have came from a more humble, Harry-esque place in trying to get the information from Slughorn rather than trying to imitate Riddlemort, because I think it just brought up that traumatic memory of Tom being able to charm and schmooze that information about a forbidden, evil thing about the Horcruxes from Slughorn, something that, you know, they probably have never, ever been supposed to talk about with students. You know, I don't know when Dumbledore removed that information from the library, from, like, the restricted section, but I imagine it was always not something they should talk about with students because it's such dark magic. So he should have come at it from a much more humble, honest point of view, being like, this memory could really be important and we need the truth to be able to defeat him once and for all. This could be the last missing key information, rather than trying to trick it out of him, just like Tom Riddle did.
Thank you so much for your responses.
Our trivia question last week was, what did Harry get Ron for his 17th birthday?
He got him a new pair of Quidditch keeper gloves.
Congratulations goes to Jessica Wallace.
Yay!
She is at 6 weeks in a row. I know she's starting to wonder where the competition is. So is this the week that somebody gives her a run for her money?
You never know. For now, let's dive into the second half of Chapter 18, birthday surprises and the beautifully done corresponding film scenes.
Chapter 18, Birthday Surprises Part 2. An hour into apparition lessons, Susan's splinching is still the most interesting thing that had happened, but Twycross doesn't seem discouraged and tells them he will see them again next Saturday, again reminding them destination, determination, deliberation. He waves his hand and vanishes the hoops before walking out of the Great Hall with Professor McGonagall. Ron catches up to Harry and asks how he did, saying he thought he felt a tingling in his feet the last time he tried. From behind them, Hermione tells him she thinks his trainers are too small, calling him Wan Wan, and then stalks past them smirking. Harry ignores this, saying he didn't feel anything, and brushes apparition aside to tell Ron to hurry up so they can get somewhere private and he can fill him in about Malfoy. They run back to the Gryffindor Tower and head up to their dormitory, where Harry gets out his Marauder's map and asks Ron to help him find Malfoy, explaining that he's been using Crabbe and Goyle as lookouts. Ron ends up finding him in the Slytherin common room, which disappoints Harry, but he rallies and vows to keep an eye on him going forward, planning to use his invisibility cloak to investigate the next time he sees him lurking somewhere with Crabbe and Goyle keeping watch. He breaks off when Neville comes into their dormitory to get himself a new pair of pants, since his were somehow singed during their lessons. Over the next couple of weeks, Harry doesn't have any luck catching Malfoy. He does see Crabbe and Goyle on their own more often, sometimes moving around the castle and other times remaining stationary in deserted corridors, but during those times, Malfoy is nowhere near them or even on the map. Harry begins to wonder if he's leaving school grounds, but doesn't see how that's possible and figures he must just be missing him on the map and that the three of them must be going their separate ways, as also seems to be happening with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. As March approaches, the wet weather also turns windy, and the upcoming Hogsmeade trip is cancelled. Ron is upset since it's on his birthday, but Harry isn't surprised after what happened to Katie Bell, who still hasn't come back from St. Mungo's. Ron gripes that it means he only has apparition to look forward to and isn't thrilled since 3 lessons in, it's still proving difficult. More people have splinched themselves, and frustration is running high with Wilkie Twycross and his 3Ds, which inspired a number of nicknames for him, the politest of which are Dog Breath and Dunghead. That morning, Harry wishes Ron a happy birthday and gives him a present to add to a small pile of other presents. As Ron unwraps it, Harry opens his trunk and rummages for the Marauders map, tossing items out of it as he searches. Ron thanks him for the new Quidditch keeper gloves, and Harry distractedly tells him it's no problem as he looks for Malfoy on the map. He says he doesn't think he's in his bed, but Ron is too busy with his presents to respond. As Harry continues poring over the map, Ron offers him a chocolate cauldron, which Harry turns down, announcing that Malfoy is gone again. Ron insists that he can't have done and stuffs another cauldron into his mouth as he gets up to get dressed. He tells Harry they better hurry so they don't have to apparate on an empty stomach. He supposes it might make it easier, but then shrugs and takes a 3rd chocolate cauldron. Harry reluctantly taps the map with his wand and says mischief managed, though it wasn't, and also gets up to get dressed, thinking hard about where Malfoy could be. Once ready, he makes it halfway out of the dormitory before realizing Ron hasn't moved. He looks back at him and reminds him about breakfast, but Ron insists he's not hungry. Harry figures he just ate half a box of chocolate cauldrons, but Ron sighs, saying that isn't it, and that Harry wouldn't understand. Though confused, Harry accepts this and turns to open the door before Ron suddenly declares that he can't stand it. Harry is starting to feel alarmed as he questions this, noting that Ron looks very pale and sick. Ron hoarsely says that he can't stop thinking about her, and Harry just gapes, concerned his friend might start calling Lavender Lav-Lav. He tries to use common sense, asking why that's stopping him from having breakfast, and is even more confused when Ron says he doesn't think she knows he exists. He asks who Ron is talking about, and then thinks he must be joking when Ron brings up Romilda Vane. Ron insists that he thinks he loves her, and Harry asks him to say that again with a straight face. He does so, talking about her shiny black hair and big dark eyes, and Harry tells him that, funny as it is, the joke is over and to drop it. He starts to leave, but stops when Ron hits him in the ear and has his fist drawn back, ready to strike again.
Harry quickly grabs his wand and thinks Levicorpus, sending Ron up in the air by his ankle and yelling about what he did that for. Ron shouts back about Harry insulting her, and Harry thinks his friend has gone insane before he notices the still open box of chocolate cauldrons. He asks where he got them, and Ron insists they were birthday presents as he struggles to get free. Harry asks if he picked them up off the floor, and Ron says they fell off his bed. Harry explains that they hadn't. He had chucked them out of his trunk while he was looking for the map. They had been from Romilda Vane and were spiked with a love potion. The only thing Ron picks up on in what Harry said is Romilda Vane, and he's desperate to know if Harry can introduce him. Harry fights a desire to laugh at the hopeful-looking Ron, who is dangling upside down. Part of him wants to let Ron down and watch him run amok until the potion wears off, but as his best friend, he instead tells Ron he will introduce him. He does send him crashing back down to the floor, and as Ron bounds back to his feet, grinning, Harry says she'll be in Slughorn's office for extra potions lessons. Ron eagerly wonders if he can take them with her, and Harry just humors him. They run into Lavender by the portrait hole, who tries to tell Wan she has a birthday present for him, but Ron simply tells her to leave him alone, since Harry's going to introduce him to Romilda Vane. Harry attempts to make an apologetic face to her, but based on how offended she looks, he thinks it must look more amused. They make it to Slughorn's office, and he answers his door in a green velvet dressing gown and matching nightcap. Looking bleary-eyed, he begins to protest that it is too early for a call, but Harry quietly cuts him off to apologize and explain that Ron has swallowed a love potion by mistake. He says he is hoping he could make him an antidote so he doesn't have to go to Madame Pomfrey, since they aren't supposed to have anything from Weasley's wizard wheezes. Slughorn says he'd think Harry could whip him up one himself, expert potioneer that he is, and Harry expresses concern that Ron might do something serious before he could get it right. At this moment, Ron moans that he can't see her and asks if he is hiding her, prompting Slughorn to wonder if the potion was within date, since they strengthen the longer they are kept. Harry is now wrestling with Ron to keep him from knocking Slughorn over and pants that explains a lot. He adds that it is his birthday and Slughorn agrees to help, inviting them in. Ron trips as he enters and worries that she saw it. Harry reassures him that she isn't there yet as Slughorn mixes ingredients into a small crystal bottle. Ron is relieved and asks how he looks. Slughorn smoothly calls him very handsome and gives him a glass of clear liquid. He tells him it is a tonic for the nerves, and Ron gulps it down. He beams, then slowly his grin sags and is replaced by a look of utmost horror. Harry smiles and thanks his professor as Ron collapses into a nearby chair, looking devastated. Slughorn decides he needs a pick-me-up and looks over a table full of drinks, settling on a bottle of oak-matured mead that he meant to give Dumbledore for Christmas. He decides the headmaster can't miss what he never had and opens it to toast Mr. Weasley's birthday. When he makes a comment about there being nothing like a fine spirit to chase away the pangs of disappointed love, he chuckles and Harry joins in, realizing it is the first time he has been mostly alone with Slughorn since his disastrous first attempt to get the true memory from him, and hopes he might be able to keep him in a good enough mood to try again. Slughorn hands them each a glass of mead and raises his own to toast Ron, though he calls him Ralph. As Harry corrects him in a whisper, Ron isn't even listening and just throws the mead into his mouth and swallows. In less than a second, Harry realizes something is horribly wrong, though Slughorn does not seem to notice. Ron drops his glass, partway standing, before he drops to the floor. He is foaming at the mouth, and his eyes are bulging from their sockets. Harry yells for Slughorn to do something, but the professor seems paralyzed by shock. Ron is twitching, choking, and beginning to turn blue. As Slughorn merely splutters, Harry leaps over the low table, sprints towards Slughorn's potion kit, and begins pulling things out of it until he finds the shriveled kidney-like stone he had collected from Harry and potions. He runs back to Ron's side and shoves the Bezoar into his mouth. With a great shudder and a rattling gasp, Ron's body falls limp and still.
And now for the actually corresponding movie scenes. The movie section picks up on a very dreamy-looking Ron sitting in the dormitory staring off into space as Harry enters the room. At Harry's approach, Ron comments on how beautiful the moon is. Harry responds ironically saying, "Divine," and asks if Ron had himself a late-night snack. Ron stands and turns toward Harry, holding a box of chocolates and confessing that he saw them on Harry's bed and thought he'd try one. Harry retorts, or 20. But Ron isn't fazed, instead telling Harry that he can't stop thinking about her. Harry walks over to his bed as he replies that he thought she was starting to annoy him, and Ron too approaches Harry's bed as he emphatically insists that she could never annoy him. He climbs onto the narrow bed right next to Harry, who looks extremely alarmed by his friend's behaviour. This concern increases when Ron earnestly informs him that he thinks he loves her. Harry stands back up and backs away, saying "brilliant," as he settles on a neighbouring bed. Ron desperately asks if he thinks she knows he exists, and Harry says he hopes so, since she's been snogging him for 3 months. Ron's lovesick face turns confused as he asks who Harry is talking about, and Harry returns the question. When Ron explains he means Romilda Vane, Harry thinks he is joking and tells him it's very funny. He gets up and begins picking wrappers up off the floor, and Ron also stands and angrily throws the chocolate box at him. When Harry says "ow" and asks what for, Ron insists that it's no joke, he's in love with her. Harry irritably appeases Ron, but also asks if he has ever actually met her. Ron glumly says no, but then excitedly asks if he can introduce them. As Harry just stares at his friend, unsure how to respond, Ron again dreamily gazes off into the distance, wanders back to the window, and sits on the floor to stare up at the moon again. Harry then picks up a card and reads it before gently telling Ron he is going to introduce him to Romilda Vane. He helps his friend back up, and as they walk out of the dormitory, the camera focuses on the card, which is addressed to Harry and says, "Thinking sweet thoughts of you." The scene transitions with a knocking sound, and again Slughorn opens his door to find Harry. This time, before he can close it in his face again, Harry quickly apologizes, explaining that he wouldn't bother him if it weren't absolutely essential. In the background, a drunk-looking Ron asks where Romilda is, prompting Slughorn to wonder what is wrong with Wimby. Harry leans forward and whispers that it is a very powerful love potion, and Slughorn concedes to let them in. As he begins collecting materials from his potions kit, he tells Harry that he would have thought he could whip up a remedy for this in no time. Harry says he thought this called for more practiced hands, and this sentiment is supported when Ron puts his arms around Slughorn's waist, nuzzles his shoulder, and calls him darling as he asks if he fancies a drink. Slughorn agrees with Harry, who guides Ron to sit on a couch behind them as the professor works. He seats him, hands him a pillow to hug, then apologizes to Slughorn for their misunderstanding earlier, as he returns to the professor's side to talk with him, while he makes the antidote. Slughorn tells Harry it is all water under the bridge, and Harry responds that he expects he is tired of all the questions about Voldemort after all these years. Slughorn pauses to look at Harry and sharply tells him not to use that name. The entire time this is going on, Ron has gotten off the couch and moves to the other across from it, climbing up on it and sitting on the back, which he promptly falls off. This interrupts Harry and Slughorn's conversation as they both look towards Ron. It cuts to Harry shoving Ron back onto the seat of the couch, just before Slughorn hands him a goblet of red-coloured liquid. Ron asks what it is, and Slughorn smoothly tells him it's a tonic for the nerves. Ron takes a gulp and smiles. Within seconds the smile begins to fade from his face, until he looks positively alarmed and asks what happened to him. Harry explains that it was a love potion. Slughorn calls it a bloody strong one at that, and when Ron says he feels really bad, the professor offers him a pick-me-up. He says he has butterbeer, wine, and a dazzling oak-matured mead that he had other intentions for. But given the circumstances, he decides to open it then. He pours them each a glass and distributes them before making a toast to life. As he and Harry clink glasses, Ron just throws his back and immediately collapses to the floor, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. Harry passes his glass to his teacher and runs to Ron's side. He calls for Slughorn to do something, but the professor merely stands there, dumbfounded over what is happening. Instead, Harry runs to the open potions kit and begins rummaging around until he finds a box labelled Bezoars. He goes back to his friend's side and sticks one of the stones into his mouth, begging for Ron to breathe. The camera shows an overhead view of Ron falling silent and still, and then Slughorn sitting in a chair, looking confused as he holds the 2 glasses of mead. It cuts back to Ron, who begins coughing and sits up, looks at Harry, says, "These girls are going to kill me," and lies back down.
Quite literally.
So it's amazing because initially I'm like, oh man, they left out all of the stuff with the apparition stuff, and I'm bummed about that. And then, Harry and his obsession with Malfoy, and then Ron's actual birthday stuff. But then the movie makes up for it so hard and so well.
Yes, lovesick Ron, love potioned Ron is what we deserve after being cheated out of apparitions.
Absolutely. This is the hero that we both need and deserve. And Rupert Grint carries this scene to the point that later on, when Harry has a similar-esque moment because of Felix Felicis, I can't help but think that is just Daniel Radcliffe trying to be as good as Ron is at being intoxicated on something and not quite pulling it off the way that Rupert Grint can.
Right. I mean, the second that we went into the summary of the chapter and you're talking about, even in the summary of the book, talking about how he's sitting there, my brain immediately sees him with those wide eyes, holding that box, hugging that box of chocolate cauldrons.
Box. It's so amazing. And it definitely came about in a different way. These are not a 100% ding moment, but it was done so so beautifully. I can't be mad about it. I mean, yes, we already talked about this last episode. I would have liked to see more apparition. I especially would have loved to see all of the students getting really upset that after 3 weeks worth of lessons, they're still not getting it. Mm-hmm. And all of that frustration surrounding the 3Ds, which they say led to some pretty nice nicknames for Wilkie Twycross.
Poor Wilkie.
Actually, what they said was the nicest of those nicknames.
Oh, I was being sarcastic.
Right. But they are very inventive.
The nicest were Dog Breath and Dunghead. And like I said earlier when we were just sort of chatting about this in our group chat, I really want to know what some of those other D nicknames are. So please, that's going to be our pondering, and I need y'all to be very inventive.
Mm-hmm. Please don't just come to the table with like douchebag, dickhead. Like,
which are acceptable as well, but we need more than that.
Yes.
I need you to focus your destination for these nicknames with true determination and deliberation and just deliver.
Dedrick degree.
Yes. Obviously, we'll revisit that when we get to that section. There's another little snarky moment between Ron and Hermione at the end of Apparition where the first lesson, this is still the first lesson, where Ron catches up to Harry, who had completely abandoned his friends to go meddle with Malfoy, meddle with Nazi von Douchebag the Second, and Ron catches up to him and he's just like, hey, how'd you do? I think on that last one, I felt something. My feet were totally tingling. And Hermione happens to walk up behind him at this exact moment as she's passing them because she's not going to stay with them. She's still pissed. And just goes, yeah, I suspect your trainers are too small, Wan. And I do really appreciate the fact that this is not the first time that Hermione has referred to Ron as Wan. And part of me wants to believe that when they do eventually sort their shit out, she calls him that just to be funny as a term of endearment.
I hope so.
I think it stayed with her. Harry, on the other hand, decides to just completely ignore this and is just like, yeah, I didn't really feel anything, but never mind that. And Ron's like, wait, like, aren't you wanting to learn how to apparate? Harry says he doesn't care because he didn't really like it much. He prefers brooms. He's just like, I have to tell you about Malfoy. Let's go. And he doesn't want to do it with Malfoy within earshot or where anybody else can overhear. So he literally makes them run all the way back to the Gryffindor common room. And Ron is panting, like, what the fuck, man? He's like, no, keep going. And they go up into the dormitory where they can't be overheard. And then he finds the Marauders map, says, I solemnly swear I'm up to no good. And they start looking for Malfoy on the map. And then, sad panda, he's just in the common room. He's not doing anything sus at this moment. But Ron is like, but Harry is like, it's okay. From now on, I'm keeping an eye on him. The moment I see him doing something he shouldn't be doing, it's invisibility cloak all the way, baby. And they get interrupted by the arrival of Neville, who has to change his pants because somehow he singed them while trying to apparate. And I need to know more about this.
Yeah. Not splinching. Like, how did you send your pants trying to go from here to there in a spin?
Maybe it is like a speed thing and you're just really going like that fast. Yeah.
Like the Flash. You're not wearing the right attire, it catches on fire and burns to a crisp.
Neville's in like the purest wool clothing and his grandmother can get it.
These little touches like this in the book that just seem so random, and 9 times out of 10 are like the funniest things that I've ever read that really just stay with me and they just tickle me. And the movie's just like, nah, we don't need anything. We need shit like, open up, you shoelace. Don't you trust me?
Does she not sound so cognate?
I mean, that's a terrible impression of Ginny, but that's how I feel about it, so that was what I was giving it.
The most awkward dialogue ever recorded in the film. It's It's absolutely gross.
Quite possibly. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that is worse than those moments.
Sorry, I'm just trying not to dry heave.
That can stay hidden up here too if you like.
I have a place you can stick that nobody will see.
I think I said this when we did the episode, but it was definitely the while you're down there moment.
Oh, and then I said we need to stop because it's gross. It's pedo-ish.
We weren't. Well, we were, but we weren't. We were. You weren't. But anyway,
let's just stop talking about that.
Yep, Harry really dives into meddling with Malfoy, just spying on Nazi von Douchebag II, and can't find him a lot of the times. He's really looking for those moments when he just sees Crabbe and Goyle looking like they're standing watch, and sometimes they're wandering around on their own. Sometimes they are, in fact, stationed in place in deserted corridors, but he literally can't find Malfoy on the map. He ends up deciding that he must just be missing him because there's a lot of little names and figures all over this map. But it does not occur to him, not being in Ravenclaw, it does not occur to him that he might be going somewhere the map doesn't fucking plot, that you've heard of before.
The Room of Requirement.
Yeah. But, like, they're literally standing in a deserted corridor, keeping watch, and the only conclusion he comes to is they must be going their separate ways like me and Ron and Hermione. I don't know why this have been the episodes of me saying things in really weird voices. Harry is just so dumb sometimes.
Is it stupidity, or is he dumb, or is it just like he's being naive? I guess it's a little bit of all of those things depending on the situation.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, a little bit of column C. A little bit of column D for dumb.
I think it's a bit of blinkering. Like, he gets into his head that, you know, whenever he has an adversary, like in any of the books, in any of the films, he doesn't give them any credit as to, like, doing something sneaky or clever. He doesn't think about the fact that they might be outwitting him. He's just frustrated at the fact that he isn't allowed to go and catch them right now because that's all he really wants to do. And then he'll not consider Draco being off the map. He'll not consider Peter Pettigrew, like, being in front of him, but also he can't see him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he'll say, this isn't working, this is wrong, oh, this is so unfair, I can't believe I can't go and deal with this right now. And it's like, Harry, you need, like, 5 seconds to, like, gather your thoughts and just think about it. And then you might actually get somewhere with your line of thinking.
Yeah, this is why Hermione is able to find the beetle that's not really a beetle.
Right. Well, we do know that Harry's strong suits are not destination deliberation and whatever the fucking 3 Ds are.
He is determined. He does have determination.
He is definitely determined, but his driving motivation is meddling, not pondering. Like, he doesn't think about what he's doing, he just does it. He is so Gryffindor in that way.
Well, and if we can just be serious for a moment, if he actually caught Malfoy in the act, he'd be like a dog that caught the car. Like, he wouldn't know what to do.
What would he even be able to do with the information? Oh, I found you with a wardrobe. And then that's it.
Are you... Malfoy, is this a metaphor for coming out of the closet? Are you working on how to tell us your orientation?
Which then feeds right into all of those fanfics.
I know.
With Drary.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
That's when the moment happens. Absolutely, right there. Another little thing that the movie does leave out that I have completely forgiven it for in this moment is the next Hogsmeade trip, which technically speaking the book leaves out as well too because it gets canceled. Harry's not surprised by this because of what happened to Katie Bell on the last one, but Ron is super bummed because that one actually took place on his birthday, and now the only thing he has to look forward to is these apparition lessons that are not going that well, despite the fact that they've completed 3 of them. All that's really happened is more splinching And then, like we said, everyone's so frustrated they keep coming up with these super fun nicknames for Wilkie Twycross that starts with the letter D.
I would be more upset as Ron in both the book and the film. In the film, I suppose we only see Ron when Harry arrives, and it's supposedly that would be his birthday, that Harry turns up and Ron is, cuddling an empty box of chocolates.
Well, they don't even mention it.
No.
Like, we could theorize that it was his birthday, but
I'd
they're
eat that
not
many
even
chocolates if my
trying to
birthday was
imply
shit.
that.
No, if you are like me and you watched the movies first, you have no clue there's a connection there.
They
You
don't
just
care
see-
about his birthday.
Right, it's just Ron holding the box of chocolates and looking longingly out at the lovely moon.
And he does flat out say he took it right off of Harry's bed.
His bed. Yep.
So it's not like he thought it was a birthday present.
Yeah. The movies don't mention birthdays full stop, though. Like, we get it twice, I think. We get Philosopher's Stone, we get Hagrid turning up with an owl and saying, Happy birthday! And then we get, in part 1 of Deathly Hallows, Hermione mentions that Ginny and her had made a cake.
Oh, yeah. We made a
And
cake.
that's it. We made a cake. And then that's it. Water under the bridge. And Harry isn't even, grateful about the cake, which is annoying.
To be fair, he didn't get any of it.
Jenny didn't feed him his own birthday cake?
Well, she didn't get the chance to.
Blech.
They had to apparate away for safety before she got to shove cake in his mouth. Because
That's
he
a good
trusts
point.
her.
You can't give her bigger things to put in his mouth.
Anywho. Yeah, so the movie doesn't give us Ron's birthday. Or, as Max was saying, birthdays much in general.
Sorry. Yeah, the only birthday that's ever acknowledged in the books or in the movies is Harry's.
Briefly.
Mm-hmm.
But in the book, we do have an actual moment where it's Ron's birthday and Harry wakes up and tosses him the present and says, Happy birthday. And Ron actually has a little pile of presents at the end of his bed that Harry assumes house elves delivered in the middle of the night. I'm always really intrigued. Is that a British thing, Max, where you wake up and you have presents at the foot of your bed? Because here we open them in front of everybody, so you have to be really awkward and pretend like you like it if you don't.
I think when I was a kid, for sure, I'd wake up and then you'd either have presents in your room or you'd go downstairs and there'd be presents waiting for you. I suppose in this sort of setting, maybe it makes sense to just have presents at the foot of your bed. But it's not a normal thing. I think it's really weird.
Okay.
Maybe it's a normal boarding school thing.
It does make sense for Hogwarts because if they left the presents down in the common room, there are absolutely kids who'd be like, mine now. What's the
Draco.
demiguy's thing? Mine now, demiguys.
What? I didn't see your name on it. My father will hear about this.
My father will hear about this. Anyway, so Ron starts opening his present, starting with Harry's and all of the other ones he's got. And the entire time, Harry is not paying attention because he's just throwing everything out of his trunk while he tries to find the Marauders map because he hides it after every use. So it's never in the same spot, and he just has to make a mess of his space trying to find it again. You'd think you could just designate an area, maybe, but no.
But no.
So he's just throwing shit out of his trunk, and Ron thanks him for the new Quidditch keeper gloves.
Which was our trivia question.
It sure was. But Harry's still so busy digging through his trunk that he's just yeah, whatever. No problem. And eventually he finds the map, does the I solemnly swear I'm up to no good, and realizes that Nazi von Douchebag II is not in bed. He's just I don't think he's in bed. Eventually he comes to the conclusion that he's not on the map. This is where his focus is. And Ron's just would you like a chocolate cauldron? I have to say, I am Ron in this moment. If I am given a box of chocolates, absolutely, I'm going to open it up and eat one right away. I will offer to share it with the people in my vicinity. And if they accept one or not, that's fine, whatever, that's on them. But I will absolutely be eating another one. which is exactly what Ron does as Harry turns his down. And Harry doesn't give a damn about chocolates in this moment because he's too busy meddling with Malfoy. Have I said meddling with Malfoy a ton this episode?
I think so.
I think that's the name of the episode.
Yeah.
I love that there's like a double entendre to that.
Harry, stop meddling with Malfoy, God.
So like I said, Harry turns down the chocolates and just goes, I don't think Malfoy's anywhere in Hogwarts. And Ron's just like, he can't be gone. Like, there's no way for him to go. Like, how would that work? And shoves the second chocolate cauldron in his mouth. This is where he really gets to be me. Because he's like, we better hurry up if we want to get something to eat before apparition. And then he's just like, well, I don't know. It might be easier to apparate on an empty stomach. There's less to deliberate with. And then he thinks about it for a second and just grabs a third chocolate cauldron and shoves it in his mouth. And I was just like, yes, that's...
He's already eaten too.
There's nothing about... I don't apparate on an empty stomach. I eat all of the chocolate you put in front of me. Harry has to accept that his meddling is not going well, and he does the whole mischief managed, even though he's like, except that it wasn't. And starts to get dressed, still all about where Malfoy might be. And once he's ready, he just starts to leave. He's like, okay, and starts to leave. And then he realizes Ron is not with him. And he turns back and just sees Ron sitting there. He's just like, Ron, breakfast. And Ron's like, I'm not hungry. And I think this is a fair question. Because Harry's just like, you just ate half a box of chocolate cauldrons, didn't you? Totally fair. He did. Can't blame him there. And Ron's just like, that's not it. You wouldn't understand.
And this is what gets Harry's attention to focus more on what's going on with Ron.
Yeah, and Harry's like, all right, compartmentalize Malfoy in the back. Okay, fair enough, but shouldn't we still go? And he starts to walk out the door again, and Ron's just like, I can't stand it. Now Harry's getting a little concerned, like hesitates, looks back, and can see that Ron actually looks kind of pale and a little sick.
I mean, one would just assume it's because he ate half a box of chocolates.
Accurate. But then when he hoarsely says he can't stop thinking about her, Harry's actually a little alarmed. Not quite for the reason you might think. Not that his friend is sick. More so that his friend is in turn becoming equally obsessed with Lavender, and he might start calling her Lab, and he doesn't know how he'd cope with that. So he's just like, okay, let's try some common sense. Well, how does that mean you can't have breakfast? And then Ron goes, I just don't think she knows I exist. And I love this moment because now we are getting into essentially exactly what the movie gave us in an even better fashion. This conversation is just chef's kiss, beautiful. Minor changes, nothing I'm upset about. But they have this moment where Harry's like, well, of course she knows you exist. You guys have been snogging for a while now. And then Ron's like, who are you talking about? And Harry's like, who are you talking about? Romilda Vane, of course.
Yeah. And then Harry's like, what?
What? Okay. And his immediate reaction, which I can't blame him, being that he's not in Ravenclaw, his immediate reaction to this is that his best friend has got to be pulling a joke on him. Like, this is a prank. He's like, oh, very funny. Okay, you can drop it now, though. But I love it. In the book, he actually says, say that again with a straight face. And Ron's just like, I love her. Her shiny black hair and her big dark eyes. They're just. And Harry's just like, okay. You made the joke. We're good now. I get it. Very funny. Ha 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 ha. Let's move on, please. And he starts to walk away for a third time and is again stopped. But this time it's because his best friend punches him in the ear.
Something I've been waiting to happen for 6 books. And as much as I've been waiting for Ron to punch Harry for 6 books. This does bring us to our first minor change between the book and the film, because in the film we see Ron throw his empty box of chocolates at Harry.
I don't mind that at all, though. It was much more natural.
It was. And it's still assault.
Yeah.
That is still assault, Ron.
It's just an empty box, so it's not going to hurt as much as a closed fist on the ear.
Yes. Ron took up some boxing.
Pun intended, folks.
Definitely intended.
That was terrible. I was just like, what a weird thing to say.
So bad it went over Max's head until Abigail pointed it out. There's probably a better one in there, but that's just what I came up with.
Yeah.
I love that in both moments, he's like, what the fuck, man? But in the book, Ron's ready to punch him again. He's got his fist drawn back and is going to hit him again. And just instinctively, Harry's wand out Levicorpus up in the air. For Ron.
It's just like, what?
He's just dangling by his ankle. And like, what the fuck was that for, man? And Ron is just hanging upside down, shouting about how Harry insulted her. And Harry's like, what? Like, have you lost your goddamn mind?
The answer is yes, but he was helped along.
Yes. And Harry actually does pick up on that one pretty quickly, because he eventually connects the box of chocolates, which is still sitting there with some in it in the book, with the ones that he got from Romilda. And he just goes, where did you get those chocolate cauldrons? And Ron, still hanging upside down, starting to turn red at this point, just goes, they were a birthday present. And Harry's just like, no, they weren't. You got them off the floor, didn't you? And he's like, so what? They fell off my bed. And Harry says, no, they didn't. I threw them out of my trunk when I was looking for the map. They're from Romilda Vane, and she fucking spiked them with the love potion. You're dosed right now, dude. None of this is real. And Ron's just like, Romilda Vane? Do you know her? Can you introduce me?
Yes, and Harry's pivot here to like being more of a concerned friend is very lovely. You know what? I can't introduce you. She's going to be in Slughorn's office taking extra potions classes. Let's go.
And Ron's just like, yeah, that makes sense. She's not in potions class with us, but what? And off they go.
Well, she's supposed to be a year or two behind them in the books, at least.
We get another change here because Harry doesn't react this way to Ron. He doesn't Levicorpus him. This box-throwing thing happens, and Ron declares that he's in love with her. And Harry, I think one of the funnier lines is Harry goes, fine, you're in love with her. Have you ever even met her? And Ron just goes,
It's so
no.
good.
Can you introduce
It's
me?
so good.
Yes.
And I love Ron's face. Like, Rupert Grint just goes from the no, but can you? And it's just like he can just hit opposite emotions in a second. His face acting, his physical acting too is brilliant, but just the range of emotions that he can show on his face for somebody who isn't supposed to have a great range of emotions is so fucking good.
He has the emotional range of a teaspoon.
Of a teaspoon.
Unless it's his face, and then it says a lot.
It says a lot. It's so good that I can't even be mad that we didn't get to see the whole Levicorpus thing. And like you were saying, even in the movie, Harry does that beautiful transition from being annoyed, thinking it's funny, being confused, being annoyed, into decent friend, because he finds the card that came with the chocolates and realizes they're from Romilda and knows what warning he got from Hermione about Romilda, and just kind of goes into, well, this is a problem. I have to take care of my friend.
But I have to treat him like a sleepwalker. I can't just tell him what's happening.
Yeah. The one thing I do love in the book, because like you said, he does transition into concerned friend, but his ear does still hurt. So when he tells him he's going to let him down from Levicorpus, he sends him crashing to the ground.
Yes.
And punch drunk love Ron just hits the ground and bounces back up like, okay, let's go find Romilda.
Reminds me of my dog when she's happy to see me.
Exactly.
It's you.
That is what I see. As Katie used to call me, the overexcited labradoodle, that is Ron in this moment. He is an overexcited labradoodle.
There's a reason his Patronus is just a puppy that knocks him over.
Terrier. Yeah, and I love the whole, like, treating him like the sleepwalker and just being like, yeah, she's taking extra potions with Slughorn. And Ron's just like, oh, maybe I can take them with her. And Harry's just like, yeah, good idea.
Let's go.
Okay, let's do this. And the movie kind of gives us this too, which I really loved because it completely echoes what we talked about in last time's episode, where Harry, like, knocks on the door and Slughorn opens it and is like, oh, you, slam door, I'm busy, lock. And literally it does the exact same thing. Transition with the knocking sound, dark door, opens it up, there's Slughorn. But this time it's Harry like, before you slam the door on me,
I really need your help.
Yeah. And it's very similar to what happens in the book, where Harry's taking him to Slughorn's office. But the only thing that makes me a little bit disappointed about this scene is the fact that in the book, they run into Lavender by the portrait hole, and we do not get that beautiful moment. They transitioned right over that moment. And I think that would have been fun to see too. I can forgive them because what we did see was so fucking perfect. I'm kind of glad the flow wasn't ruined. But it would have been hilarious to see Lavender just be like, One, you're late. I have a present for you. And then Ron just being like, leave me alone, woman. Harry's taking me to meet Romilda Vane.
I think I would have liked to have seen that. I don't think it would have ruined the flow. I think it would have been like passionate and love Ron being like, who are you and why are you touching me?
Right. And I especially love the fact that Harry just ushers Ron right out the portrait hole and tries to give Lavender an apologetic look at the same time, but based on how offended she looks, he thinks it may have just looked amused. It creates just such a stunning visual. I don't know how you read that section and think, this doesn't need to be in a movie. Sir, you are wrong, and you deprived us. But I can forgive you.
It would have played like, you're not Romilda, and then, which is like basically Ron's interaction with Slughorn when they get there. I was just like, yeah. He knows Harry is taking him to Romilda, and everyone on the way is just not Romilda.
Right. Not Romilda.
I do really love like when they get to. I was like, are you hiding her from me?
Yes.
Like. What?
And
she's not
like
a present. You can't just tuck her away in the closet for later.
Right. And I do love the fact that in the movie, it's like the more time goes on, the worse the love potion seems to get as well. Which, I don't know that I got that feeling from the book. It was just pretty bad since it was past date, as Slughorn explains, because they get to his office, knock on the door, and initially, Slughorn's just like, well, it's really fucking early. I like to have a lie-in on weekends. And Harry's just like, I'm really sorry. And there isn't the same awkwardness. But the movie pretty much makes it seem like that whole fiasco with Harry just flat out imitating Tom Riddle from Slughorn's memory twice. It made it seem like that happened literally earlier that day, and this was later that same night.
Right.
So it implies that Harry creeped up on Slughorn's class while he was ending class with another class, and then went to his office and knocked on the door and got locked out, and is now showing up at his office again a third time in one day. Like, talk about why are you so obsessed with me? But he quickly explains, I wouldn't be here if it weren't an absolute emergency. And thankfully, he has Ron in the background acting like an absolute idiot. Just being like, Where is she? I don't see her. Are you hiding her? And it makes it pretty easy. Just be like, yeah, he swallowed a love potion by mistake and it's bad. So Slughorn invites them in, which is essentially what happens in the movie at that point.
Does it imply that because Slughorn thinks the love potion is out of date and Harry had to, like, root through his trunk to find it, that Romilda Vane put that in there at the start of the year?
Well, she actually gave it to him.
Oh,
right before Slughorn's party.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he just, like, kept it, just tossed it in the trunk. I don't know if he was worried about somebody else getting to it.
No, he's just being a lazy boy. It would require him leaving the dormitory and, like, going past the common room and finding a place to dispose of it safely. Guess I'll just chuck it in my trunk. Nobody should be in there.
The hilarity that would ensue.
Oh my.
If he just shared it with all of his dorm mates and the entire 6th year of Gryffindor boys were obsessed with Romilda Vane for a while.
Would have been great.
I think it would have been hilarious. So we know when Harry got the chocolates in the book. In the movie, they kind of implied that she had just left them on his bed that day.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie, they probably weren't out of date unless she got them and held on to them for a while.
Well, he says it.
But it was apparently, as Slughorn said, a very strong love potion.
Yeah, the movie does a better job of speaking more to the desperation of teenage girls.
Oh, yeah.
I would have loved to see more attempts on Harry's, not life, but on his
free will. I would love to see more attempts on Harry's right to choose who he loves.
Just because, like we don't see, like, Romilda Vane does not have, like, more than 2 lines in the book. She has no lines in the film. She has a smile. And
she's actually really attractive in the movies.
Well, she's older than... Is she older than Harry? Is that something they say at some point?
In the book, she's like a 3rd year or something. Like, it was like a 3rd year or a 4th year. Like, she was younger. I think she was a 3rd year when Harry was in the 5th year.
Yeah, there's a 2-year age difference roughly between the two of them, and in the book, she's like a very plain girl.
So she's just awesome.
Or no, maybe she was a 3rd year at the start of the 6th book. So maybe she's in 3rd. She's younger. I am pretty sure she's younger than Harry.
I mean, that speaks to, like, she's made a pretty good love potion.
Well, she didn't make it. She got it from Fred and George's shop.
Oh,
yeah, it's a Weasley's Wizard Weezes.
I think because they have the love potion scene at the beginning of the film, it makes me think, oh, she makes the love potion, but that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I would say in the movie, it's not introduced as something that she's, I think, purchased from the shop. I think in the movie, we learn how to make love potion, and then all of a sudden, the teenage girls are trying to make and dose boys. And let me just say, the author, who has such passionate opinions about things, thinks it's super fun to make jokes about date rape. It's like, this is akin to dosing a girl's drink at the bar.
Yeah, we talked about this, Carly and I, in a previous episode. So we're going to put a trigger warning in front of this.
Yeah.
But it's tough because we are laughing hysterically at how Ron is acting like during this. And it is funny. But it is also a very touchy subject because it is, he gets roofied.
Right. Yeah. If you are somebody who has fallen victim to that, this is going to hit you a very different way than it hits somebody who hasn't fallen victim to that.
It's kind of weird as well because we don't see the actual effect of the love potion either. We see Ron get found as having had the love potion, and we see the sort of comedic effect it has of him, like, pining, essentially. We don't see what that actually means in terms of you know, what does that mean? For the only hint we get at that is learning about Tom Riddle and his, you know, the circumstances of his birth. And that sounds pretty bad. Like,
I mean, that is worse, I think, because obviously she made him do a lot of things against his will, including having a child and marrying her. I have to wonder how bad this love potion would have been if it was within date. Because maybe Fred and George just made it for a laugh to be like, oh, you're just going to get a little fluttery around this person and want to meet them, but it's not necessarily going to fully alter your brain the way that it did to Ron.
Mm-hmm.
They do mention that Slughorn was really, like, academically intrigued by how Ron was acting.
and you'd have to assume that there would be some rules against doing this to people.
Do you mean like there are rules against putting a roofie in somebody's drink?
Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Weasley's Wizard Wheezes are banned for multiple obvious reasons. And I'm sure that plays a part of it. I'm really interested in the fact that Fred and George sell them, make them, and sell them at all.
Yeah, like are they keeping a really good eye on how long these things are sitting on the shelves? Because as Slughorn says, and I agree with you, I think Fred and George are like just a little like making you silly and giddy around somebody. And to like this.
Yeah, and well, like we were saying a couple episodes ago or a few episodes ago, that I feel like you have to activate them in some way. Like in order for Romilda to use that love potion in those chocolate cauldrons on Harry to get him to like her, I feel like she had to put something of herself in that potion to activate it. So maybe it has a longer shelf life until it's been activated.
Yep. Probably a piece of her hair, like any good stalker.
Something like that. But it just seems really interesting. And it's definitely one of those like deeper topics that you're like, well, if you really think about this too hard, this is actually not funny. But also, I loved seeing Rupert Grint be Ron in this moment, and it was hilarious, and it was so well acted that I honestly think Rupert Grint is underrated. I think he is the least popular of the trio, and probably the most talented.
As an actor.
Ginger problems.
I think I'd like to just like say something of like the film and the book, but predominantly the film because the film came out later than the book, that I think it's fairly badly done to make it seem like the love potions in the story be marketed towards the female students in the first place, and then also to majorly affect the female students in the second instance that we see them.
I think it goes a little bit hand in hand with the time in which this was written, because for sure male victims were not believed or considered to be a thing. So I think that the problematic aspects of these love potions being marketed to girls and being used by girls to get the attention of a boy wouldn't have been considered as problematic as we know that it is today.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We do have to consider the time and the environment that something was created and released in.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I love that there's a lot more dialogue surrounding the problematic aspects of, I want to say, the stories in general. A lot of times people talk about them like it means the stories aren't worthwhile anymore, but you could read any book from this time period and find problematic things, unless it's like a full-blown children's book this is young adults. Like, there's going to be more mature themes. But what was considered acceptable back when these were being written is now mostly known by a large portion of the population as not being. And I personally like to use that as a way of opening dialogue for how much things have changed and how far we've come, and not just erasing where we started from.
Mm-hmm.
This got really heavy for such a hilarious part of the book and movie.
It was always
but that's
going
fine
to, because it's
I love it.
It can be perceived in such a different way to how it plays, and I think it's a testament to Rupert Grint that it plays as funny as it was. Like, in the book, if you don't read it in a certain way, you know, there's physical violence, which then results in a small fight, but still a fight. And then, which leads to the fairly traumatic poisoning of a young boy. Like, it's, you know... But in the movie, it's all sort of overcast by Rupert Grint being astounding.
Absolutely astounding. And I think that is what makes it so funny. It's less concerning because he is in a safe place. And he is in the book as well. Like, Harry's not going to let him do anything stupid, even if he kind of thinks he might want to because his ear hurts. But he ultimately is going to protect his friend. And I think the way that they played it with Ron and with Rupert, and really showing us the hilarity of everything, they exaggerated it. Because, yeah, it was entertaining in the book to a certain extent. Like, there were definitely funny moments, you know, like Ron thinking that they're hiding her somewhere, and Slughorn calling him by the wrong name, and Ron like tripping as he tries to get into Slughorn's office and like jumping up and being like, did she see that? Like, there were funny aspects to it, but it was still ultimately more concerning. And because the movie came out at a later date compared to when the book was written, I think the way they played it helped a lot in the controversial aspect of the topic. Because, oh my God, the entire time that Harry is trying to have this conversation with Slughorn in the movie and just use this as another moment to like butter him up and get the real memory out of him, you just have Ron milling around in the background, hugging a pillow, climbing up on the couch, and just falling off the back of it. Like, it is just comedy gold. And I don't even think the director told him to do that. I think they were like, act like you're dumbass in the background. Go.
What does lovesick look like to you? Do that.
Yeah. I don't think that they gave him really specific directions. I think they just let Rupert Grint go. And it really helped balance out the moment, because Harry is trying to do a little bit more of what I suggested, where he's trying to gain a little bit more confidence with him, and he makes that comment about how it's got to get old after all this time, people asking him questions about Voldemort. And Slughorn does what nearly everybody else in the wizarding world does and just like freaks out, don't say the name, and then Ron falls off the back of a couch, and they're both like, oh yeah, that's right, we have a bigger issue right now. And then it just cuts straight to him giving Ron that potion, but you even got Harry like shoving him back on the couch, like, stay there, stay down.
All the while he's got this big grin as well. He's like constantly happy.
That grin is, like I said, it's just mwah, chef's kiss. That grin is so perfect. And then when he gives them, in both the book and the movie, he gets the tonic for nerves, which is actually the antidote for a love potion. And he drinks it down, and he's just smiling and smiling, and it just slowly fades off his face. In the book, they say that he looks more horrified.
I mean, probably because he immediately understood what happened to him, and he's like, oh my God.
Yeah, and I don't know that he looked as horrified in the movie.
Just depressed.
He was definitely like, what just happened?
Yeah, and they were like, love potion, really strong one.
Mm-hmm.
I feel awful.
Right. As well you should, hungover from your expired love potion. Dated love potion,
Yeah.
You have
if
to,
you will.
Or,
You have
yeah,
to-
dated in the book, very, very strong in the movie. Either way, this moment of what turned into absolute hilarity that was thankfully resolved with nothing serious happening is replaced by actual horror when Slughorn decides to pour them all a drink as a pick-me-up and to toast Ron's birthday in the book, because that was a thing in the book. And he does, in both, he goes, I've got butterbeer and wine and some oak-matured mead, which this one struck me as really interesting, this difference here. Very minor, but in the book, Slughorn flat out says that he had intended to give that oak-matured mead to Dumbledore for Christmas before saying what he never had he can't miss and deciding to open it and share it with the boys. Whereas in the movie, he just says he had other intentions for. And it's an interesting flip because previously, when there was something that could have been an attack on Dumbledore, they just flat out said it. That necklace was meant for Dumbledore. Katie Bell was supposed to give it to Dumbledore. So it was interesting to me that they chose to be more vague about Slughorn's intentions with the oak-matured mead, the dazzling oak-matured mead.
Yeah, I think that's because when he does say who it's for, there's a more dramatic impact after seeing, like, Ron literally almost died.
It's true. He does reveal it in the hospital wing.
Yeah, because I suppose also it's like when Katie Bell is talking about what happened and then says to McGonagall, I was supposed to deliver it to Professor Dumbledore, and it's sort of like you have this, I don't know, kind of like investigation moment, because obviously the whole thing is trying to figure out what's going on in the entire plot, because at that point we don't really know what Draco Malfoy's doing, or, what's really going on, who the Half-Blood Prince is. It's also a little bit of a mystery. So having Slughorn say it in front of all the other teachers when Ron's in the hospital is a bit more like, the case thickens or something like that, rather than
plot thickens.
Like rather than a passing like, this is for Professor Dumbledore, and then we would have forgotten it by the time Ron was in the hospital.
Yeah.
It does.
No, that's
it
a good
sets it
point.
up for, a second attempt. Somebody really wants this man dead, and it's not the Ministry of Magic.
It's probably the Ministry of Magic too,
Right,
but
not in this particular instance.
I love the fact that Slughorn, in the book anyway, is toasting Ron for his birthday and just fucking calls him
What's
Ralph.
wrong with Wembley?
He at
Happy
least
birthday,
did.
Ralph.
Yeah, he did at least call him Mr. Weasley earlier in the book, like, what's wrong with Mr. Weasley? But then when he's toasting him, he just calls him Ralph. And I love it in the sense that I think that's, like, humorous. I hate it for Ron. Like, dude, Slughorn, you're such a dick. I know that Ron has not shown you anything super impressive in your class, but he is worth something, and you're an asshole to the Weasleys in general. Except for Ginny, I suppose, but...
I think it's this slight pompousness he has. It does stink a little bit of, like, wealthy Slytherin looking down on, like, the poorer families.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah,
it's not like Ron's an impressive person to him.
To be fair, I don't know that there is anything. Had he met him in his first year when he beat that chess set and saw that side of him, maybe there would have been a difference. But as the books went on later, it was like the author just took more and more of Ron's worth away and just kept giving it to Harry or Hermione.
Yeah.
More so Hermione.
Ron doesn't play chess past book one, essentially.
Yeah. It was a plot device for book one and then completely got erased from his intelligence.
Any agency that Ron would have had to be good at Quidditch either, because, it outright states that Ron likes Quidditch. He practices Quidditch with his brothers. Like, it says all of this. But no, because Harry has to be the one who's actually like amazing at Quidditch, and that's accentuated by the fact that Ron, even when Ron does well, it seems to be done in a clumsy, not really purposeful way.
Oh, for sure in the movie.
Yeah.
I wonder if Slughorn had watched that Quidditch match when Ron thought he was dosed up on liquid luck, because he was really impressive during that. And I feel like that should speak for something. Like, obviously, he was all about Gwynog Jones.
Yeah, I think we start seeing like the impressive parts of Ron, or his what really should be seen as his strong suits, being given more to Hermione and Harry, because they don't lack self-confidence, but Ron does. And it's really easy for people with self-confidence to suddenly seem better than somebody who tries really hard but still isn't confident about it.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that Rupert Grint can pull off shit like this whole scene and have everybody just dying of laughter and loving it so much that he kind of wrote himself into the comedic relief that way.
Probably.
But like I was saying, the amusing moments of Slughorn calling him by the wrong name, be it Ralph in the book or what was it, Wimby in the movie?
Wimbley
in the movie. It's entertaining, it's funny, and then it just gets this hard cut off because Ron doesn't give a fuck. He's so messed up from what happened to him that he just throws back this glass of mead that turns out to be real poisoned and not just love potion poisoned. So Ronald Weasley is having a very bad day. And to make it even worse, the adult in the room just sort of fucking panics and doesn't know what to do. And Harry's like, do something. And Slughorn's like, ah! And thank God, in the book at least, Harry had given Slughorn that Bezoar as part of his potions project because it meant it was in Slughorn's bag. And Harry was able to run and grab it and just shove it down Ron's throat because that's what the Half-Blood Prince said to do. And in this case, it actually worked. And it ended up saving Ron's life.
Harry may not be great at deep thought, but he is great at thinking quickly in urgent situations.
He is very reactive. Yeah. He didn't have to think about what to do. That was instinctual.
Yes.
He has very good instincts. He doesn't have good thinks.
Logic. So, this does, like the way the scene wraps up, there's a little difference here. In the book, Harry does run over to his potions case and he grabs the Bezoar and he crams it down Ron's throat. That happens in both the book and the movie. But in the book, he does that. The convulsing stops, the foaming stops. He just kind of lays there still. And then that's the end of it. In the movie, all of that stops. And then suddenly Ron wakes up and he's just like, oh, these girls are going to kill me.
He like coughs dramatically and sits up, looks right at Harry.
Oh my God, these girls are going to kill me. Yes, Ron. Yeah, they are.
And then just lies back down.
And then, yeah, that's it.
Completely, there's no allusion to him that this was a mistake. He thinks he's been poisoned by yet another
Which
girl.
Technically he was.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a few chapters.
Yes.
Obviously, we don't have any new actors to talk about, but we did just in all of the detail talk about how amazing Rupert Grint was because he did really carry this scene. I don't think we need to say anything more than that because we ended up sprinkling it throughout. But yeah, it was just a brilliant performance that really added a lot of humor to what was otherwise a very heavy scene. And honestly, probably necessary to make something like that topic as we got into be something a little bit more palatable, because had you not delivered this with the humor, it's just really fucked up. And it's still fucked up, but without the humor, it's like, ooh.
I think that'll bring us to our Potter Pondering. This week, what D nicknames do you think the students called Wilkie Twycross? Wilkie Twyquath.
Remember to really deliberate and be determined and think about your destination and deliver.
You can't just call them a dickbag.
No, please don't do that. Yeah, no, really, really think about it so you arrive at the right D-name destination.
Yes, and you can give us more than one. And I don't mind if you share things like dickhole or dillweed or, the more boring ones, if that helps you brainstorm and get yourself there. If you need to Google ideas, go for it. But I want to hear what you all come up with. Find the post on our Facebook page and share your thoughts, or call us at 216-526-6792 and leave your response as a voicemail. Make sure you start off telling us your name and then go into your answer. Don't forget you can also stitch your response on TikTok.
We really look forward to reading, hearing, and seeing them.
This week's Wizarding Word is that a curated selection of Harry Potter lore is being released on August 29th, 2024. It'll have 80 articles and anecdotes about the world of Harry Potter, including backstories on big characters and additional context on the stories you might not have known. Read by 4 narrators, including Ivana Lynch.
Who's Luna Lovegood?
Love me some Luna.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be really neat. It's a lot of the stories and articles that are already on the Wizarding World that were originally on Pottermore. They're just now getting narrated and put out in one place on Audible, exclusively on Audible, if I'm not mistaken. But we have an article for this that we will share with you all as well, so you can find that on our Facebook page after this episode goes up.
This week's trivia question is, why were Fred and George in Hogsmeade on Ron's birthday? The first one who responds with a correct answer and the code word #surprise will get a sticker.
Another way to get a sticker is to rate and review us through iTunes. If you don't have an Apple account, then you can write us a recommendation on our Facebook page. Make sure to email us at foxsakepod@gmail.com to let us know you did, and we'll get back to you to figure out which sticker you want and where to send it. Don't forget to find us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at FoxSakePod. Following us on Podbean at FoxSakePod will get you the episode as early as possible and give you a leg up in answering the trivia question. You can also go to our website at forfoxsakepodcast.com to check out our For Fawkes Sake and Harry Potter related merchandise for sale. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we post our weekly podcast episodes, cooking show episodes, vlogs, bloopers, and other random videos. If you would like to become a patron, you can find us on Patreon at Fawkes Sake Pod. Patronage starts at $2 and will get you some awesome perks like For Fawkes Sake swag, access to our Discord channel, chats, and more. Check out our page for the details.
As always, any support you can give is greatly appreciated.
And join us next time when we talk about the first half of Chapter 19, Elf's Tales, and the corresponding film scenes.
Thanks for listening.
We hope you hear us again. I'm Abigail.
I'm Max.
I'm Ellen, and we are For Fawkes Sake.